Today's topic is fear. I remember when I first started doing my research years ago, when I started to realize that the world was working a little bit differently than I had thought, that I discovered fear was at the core of so much of what we do. And I started to think of fear as being at the roots of what I'd call the battleground. It's the version of the world where we're all just trying to survive, maybe create a little safe space for ourselves where we can be protected from the crazy of what's going on in the world. Maybe, accumulate enough money that we can be safe. But all of those behaviors that I had thought about growing up as just being normal societal aims were actually about fear. They were driven by fear. And of course, now today we know that. We know about insecurity. We know about people manipulating and pushing the fear button in order to get us to take action. So that might sound a little bit like old news, but we're going to talk about some new things today that you may never have heard before. And when you hear about these things and bring them into your conscious awareness, they will help you to actually process your fear and to be able to respond to the world from a different place and a different energy, one that will help you to show up in an energy that creates healthy, happy situations and experiences and ultimately outcomes, right? Anything that we experience in a positive, healthy way is ultimately going to lead to positive, healthy results. I don't make the universe's laws. I just find myself trying to align with them and follow them because to fight with them never worked well for me. Hi, I'm Chris Burke. Welcome to Healing from A to Z with Masterful You and KB. This is all about discovering that you are already perfectly whole. There is nothing wrong with you. You have just been convinced to lose some of the connections, to drop some of the connections that you have to parts of yourself. And so now it's kind of like walking around with different fragments of yourself instead of one whole cohesive self that you can just access whatever you need whenever you need it. That's what we talk about, the conscious versus the unconscious. So one of the things about fear is that we're not supposed to admit that we're afraid in our society, especially if you're a male, or at least that's the way it's been throughout my lifetime. I do think that's changing a bit. But I want to talk about the fact that we are all afraid. It has been scientifically proven that insecurity, fear of abandonment, fear of not being liked, all of those things which would have led to being kicked out of our tribes or groups historically, like way back in our lineage, all of that fear is still there in our cell memory. And so we are still instinctively afraid of not being liked, of being rejected, of being abandoned. So that insecurity is always bubbling under the surface, whether we are aware of it or we acknowledge it or not. So the thing is, it's important that we acknowledge it and learn how to process it and work with it in a positive way, because I will guarantee you that the people who are selling you ideologies, are selling you products and services, they know about your fears, your insecurities, and they use them in order to get you to take the action they want you to take. So what I love about Own Your Experience and this whole process is that you actually get to decide for yourself what action you will take based on what's in your best interest. And that's so important, because until we actually own the part of us that's afraid, we're always reacting to what's happening in the outside world and thinking that there's no other way to react. We don't see the option because we don't recognize that fear is driving the bus. Now, for those of us who are saying, if you're still with me, bravo, because a lot of people don't like to hear that they're afraid. So those of you who are here may be a little aware. Yeah, sometimes I am afraid. Sometimes I realize that I'm being manipulated with my fear. That's perfectly natural. Welcome to being human. The thing is, we call fear by a lot of different names, which allows us to say or to admit on some level, to acknowledge, yes, I'm afraid without saying it. Anxiety is fear. Stress is fear. Guilt, shame, grief, all of these are in fact part of fear's family. Fear has a big family. So all of those negative emotions, let me give you an example. So you might say grief. How can grief be part of fear? Let's say that you lose someone that you love dearly, right? If you knew with absolute confidence that that person or that, that soul had gone on to a wonderful place and that you were going to see them again in, some number of years, and you knew that with absolute certainty, the grief wouldn't be so sad or so heavy. The reason the grief is so heavy is because we don't know that. Most of us walking around don't have confidence in what happens after. We can't remember. It's a good way of saying it for a lot of us. And we're kind of afraid to look into it. So we might have this idea of like, oh, it's just lights out. That's the end. Nothing else happens. Well, if that's your vision of it, then when somebody leaves, that puts you in touch with your own mortality, and it makes you feel like, oh my gosh, we're all going to into some sort of black void, which is a horrible idea. So of course we would be afraid of that. And that fear will keep us from actually investigating and having experiences that build our confidence, like, oh, maybe I don't know exactly what's going on, but I know something. Something happens after this experience. We can find that out through experience, but we have to be open to having those experiences and inviting in that new information. Okay, so what are the fears that we commonly talk about? I'm afraid of failing. Okay, so I always talk about the fear of failure. It's an interesting one because failure is going to happen over and over and over again as we're on the path to learning how to succeed. It's just part of the process. Failure is part of the process. So if I'm failing at something in this moment, if I consider myself to be failing, then if I say, oh my God, I failed, and that means that everybody's going to reject me and I don't think very highly of myself, and maybe I'm, complete fraud, and all of the things that we humans are inclined to think in our current society, then I might just beat myself up and say, oh, I failed, and give up, right? But there's another energy in which I can say, okay, that's not working, now what? This energy is one that we access when we decide to get into that energy of love or faith or peace. There are a lot of different words that people use to describe the experience of, I'm okay. Whatever's happening here is okay. I've gathered my evidence through experience that I'm actually not here on some rock hurtling through space in a meaningless way, but there is something bigger, something more beautiful going on here. And if I choose to, I can align myself with it. And so how do we find out about that? Like, how do we experience it personally, right? Don't take anybody's word for the way things are. We need to actually have our own experience. We can know about things from what people tell us, but we can't actually know something until we experience, until we feel it, until we sense it in our own bodies, until we have a full experience. That's just true. So our intellect can be full of all kinds of information that it's been told, but until we've actually encountered the situation ourselves and navigated it, we don't know for sure what the situation is. We only know about it. We've got a concept of it, not an experience. An experience has thoughts and feelings and actions, saying and doing, right? And body sensations and knowing or intuition. And if we're really in a good place, it also has inspiration, sparks of inspiration. So there are all kinds of things going on in an experience. It's really rich with streams of information coming in that we can use to better understand ourselves and understand the situation that we're in. But if we're in a situation or in a state of mind where we're thinking everything that we think is all we need, like, oh, I already know about that, I don't need to actually experience it, then we're limiting ourselves. It's like we're living in 20% of the experience and we're missing out on what it has to teach us. It's the process where we learn. The same is true of failure. It's the process of failing and discovering and failing and discovering that teaches us how to succeed and actually turns us into people capable of succeeding in whatever area that we choose, right? It's actually the process of the experience that leads us to somebody who knows how to do that. Eventually, to succeed, you must be somebody who can say, okay, that didn't work. What else can I do? And so many of us are afraid to even try for fear. I was like that. A lot of people I know were like that, afraid to even try, even in a very, sort of safe, protected way. Afraid to try new things because, oh my God, what if I fail? What if I tell people what it is that I'm doing and then it doesn't work? What will they say? They'll be whispering behind my back. That is fear. Right? And fear will keep you very small until you realize, and this is part of what the process of failing, trying and failing teaches us, you don't have to tell anybody what you're doing, right? You can actually just decide, hey, I'm going to try this thing. I'm going to commit myself to doing this thing, and I'm going to give myself some period of time, and I'm going to explore. I'm going to learn as much as I can about it. I'm going to try new things. I'm going to see what works and what doesn't work. I'm going to be an explorer, an experimenter in my own life so that I can build the kind of life that I want. But in order to do that, I have to learn how to stop being the person who's too afraid to try and start being the person who knows that no matter what happens, I'm equipped to deal with it. That's what Own Your Experience is all about. Let's do a little exercise to find out what you are afraid of and how to process that fear in a way that you can get unstuck and move forward. So the first thing is you want to write down 3 things that you are currently afraid of. Just 3 things. Afraid of not having enough money, afraid that my partner isn't going to love me forever, whatever the things are. And usually it's those kind of big things that are really underneath, bubbling and driving a lot of our reactions. Then write down 3 things that you are really confident about, that you don't worry about at all. We always want to look at, here's the side of the things that I'm afraid of, but I also have this other side. It's so important to recognize and give yourself credit for the things that you're not worried about. What are the things that you just trust to be the way they are? Write those 3 things down. This is your starting place. This is your experience of fear. And you're looking at both sides of the spectrum. Things you're afraid of, things you're not afraid of. Now, as you look at that and you experience that, really just, look at and consider, this is my reality right now. This is what pops into my conscious mind. Got a lot more going on in the unconscious mind, but this is what you're conscious of at this moment. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being it's nearly impossible to get out of bed because my fear is paralyzing me, and by the way, been there, to a 10, which is I know that my fear serves me to let me know what's going on in my subconscious, and I use that to move forward effortlessly. That's your 10. Where are you right now? This is an intuitive exercise. Whatever number pops into your head, that's where you are. Write that number down. And you're really clear about what that experience is like, what your experience is like at this number. So now, what do you think about this? Write down what you think. Then write down what you feel emotionally. Then write down what you're saying and doing to yourself. What's your internal dialogue as you consider this? What do you say to other people? And notice, are you doing the exercise or are you telling yourself you're going to do it later? That's an internal dialogue, saying and doing. Nothing wrong with whatever we choose. It's just to make us aware that we have options. The next one is, what is your awareness of your body sensations? So just use your awareness to scan your body and notice, is there any place that's tight? Is your jaw clenched? Are your toes curled? Are your legs crossed together tightly? And then finally, what do you know to be true about this experience? Okay, good work. So you've now interviewed your experience and you're really clear about what that experience is like, what your experience is like at this number. So now we're going to decide where we want to be having that experience. Where do you want to be on that scale? So this process is so important because it really demonstrates to us, and you can experience it for yourself, that it's not who you are that determines how your life works. It's where you are on your scale. It's where you are in your experience. The thoughts and feelings and all of the rest of it that happen at a certain number are different when we move to a different number. And then you have different experiences which create different outcomes in your world, different results. It's all inside of you already. The idea that you need something that you don't have is simply something that we've learned. It was never true. So let's go to choosing that number. I always recommend that people choose a 7, 8, something like that. And choose whatever number feels right to you. But to keep it at something that feels achievable. And also because as you move closer and closer to a 10, you will realize that 10 is so much better. It just keeps growing and growing. You never get to it. All right. So now we're going to interview this future experience, this chosen experience. And we're going to actually give ourselves an opportunity to experience it right now with our imaginations. So you're going to ask yourself, what will I be thinking when I am at this new energy level, when I'm having a more positive experience of this fear that you have defined? Okay, what will you be feeling emotionally? What will you be saying and doing internally and with other people? What will you be sensing in your body? How will your body sensations be different? And finally, what will you know is true about yourself and about your life? Okay, well done. This is a really important exercise because it really plugs us into the fact that our conscious mind is setting direction. Our conscious mind is asking questions, but it needs the cooperation of the unconscious mind. As Freud said, the conscious mind is the tip of the iceberg. The rest is what's driving our behavior and our choices. Just because we don't know what is driving our behavior in a particular moment, that doesn't mean it doesn't have roots. There's a reason for us behaving the way we do. And a lot of times we will behave in a certain way and maybe we're not super happy about that. And then we use our intellect to justify the way we behaved. But when we get to the roots of the behavior and we learn like, oh, that's why I do that. As soon as that becomes in your awareness, then you have a choice and you can actually recognize it and say, oh, I know what that is. And you can decide, is that working for you or not? You can actually explore and find out what are the other ways that I could behave in this situation. We do a lot of that at Masterful You. Go to masterfulyou.com we have a lot of resources there, including lots of free ones to support you in seeing what the other options are. So if there are scenarios where you normally react in a certain way, we offer up, well, here are some other ways that people act when they're at different places on the compass because they're having different thoughts and different feelings, etc. Okay, on Fridays, my dear friend and colleague, Judy Forder, and I do a Q&A session live at 11 o'clock Eastern Time. The link to that will be down below in the description. You can ask questions, and if you've missed it, because it's a weekly thing, then you can always go and watch it afterwards. And it's where we really take the week's topics and we kind of, we squeeze them. We look at them from a lot of different directions. We talk about the comments that people have made and also the questions that they've asked, because this is about healing all of us, right? I'm definitely doing my healing in this process, but I am not what do we say about but? That just negates what you said. I am definitely doing my own healing in this process, and I'm inviting you to come along because, as all of us know at this point, when you look at the world, there's a need for a lot of healing. Okay, the final step in this exercise, ask yourself, what do I need to say or do to move from the experience I'm having to the experience I choose related to fear? What do you need to know or do? You ask the question, I call it the magic toaster. That question goes into the unconscious and you wait for a response. Some of you who are highly intuitive may get a response immediately. Others of you may find that it comes to you in a dream, or a week from now somebody says, hey, have you ever read this book? And they start talking about it and a light bulb goes off and you go, wow, that sounds like it answers the question I'm asking. So just be open to the gifts, the little nudges, the guidance that life will offer to you. Your unconscious mind can communicate with you through infinite channels. So pay attention to that. Be on the lookout. This is your healing adventure, and it matters. You matter. Thank you for spending your precious time with me here today. And most of all, thank you for being you.